Connective tissues bind the other kinds of tissues together. So we haven't talked about the other kinds yet, but besides epithelial, we have muscle and nerve. And connective tissues are going to hold all of those other three tissue types together. But they are also bones. So you can see here they're talking about bones. Bones, tendons, ligaments, etc. Those are part of connective tissue. Another connective tissue that you might not think of is blood. Blood is a connective tissue, so that's binding all the other tissue types together. So we have bone and blood. Adipose tissue is fat, so these are surrounding and they're an insulative layer, basically, in us. You have fibrous connective tissue. These are things like tendons or ligaments that are holding you together. You have cartilage, which is a loose connective tissue that has some elastic fibers in it. And then, collagenous. This is collagen, and that has some elastic fibers in it. And then you have the cartilage, which is, it's basically chondrocytes. And it is kind of like a jelly, not really jelly, but it's a cushion. So those are different kinds of connective tissues. You see a lot of this is in association with the vertebral column. All right, so a lot of these cells tend to be more sparse. And if they are collagen, they are made up of proteins, somewhat elastic, but not really, like it doesn't stretch, whereas elastic fibers do actually or can stretch to some degree. And then the other things are, have specialized functions. So those are the different types of connective tissues. All right, so the next is muscle. All right, so we basically have three types of muscle. We have what they call skeletal muscle, or stratified or fibrous muscle. You have smooth muscle, which is usually the lining of like some kind of vessel, and or the lining of like it's the muscle that's helping like peristalsis, the movement of food down your digestive tract. And then you have cardiac muscle, and of course that's part of your heart. Cardiac, notice that the skeletal muscle is very stratified. It has like long fibers. It has this particular look to it that has these fibers in a line or in somites. That is, small little segments. Whereas smooth muscle tends to have the nuclei, they're long and skinny cells and have the nuclei not all on top of each other, and they're making layers of cells that are all together, just kind of a smooth look to it. Notice that the cardiac muscle is somewhat like the other two, and in fact they used to think that there was only two muscle types and that the heart just had both types, because you can see right here, well, it's not very clear on this picture, but there is somewhat of that skeletal look or the stratified look there, and then these guys are kind of smooth looking. So the cardiac muscle is now considered its own muscle type, and that's because it's only found in the heart. All right, so that's cardiac. Nerve is the last one. Nerve cells have a very particular look to it. That is, they look very pronged with these axons sticking out. The cell body is here. That's the nucleus of the cell body. And there is these little processes called dendrites that stick out. Some of them are very long, and those are called axons. That is where the nerve impulse travels, and it'll travel, which they don't show here, to a set of dendrites that are on the other end connecting to the other side of the cell body of the next neighboring cell. So they exist as long lines of cell bodies, axon, dendrites attached to the next cell body or connected, making connection to the next cell body axon, dendrite, etc. And there's groups of those, and those are called nerves. There's different types of nerves. There's nerves, sensory nerves that pick up impulses from your skin. There is the inner neuron, which is kind of like the cells that are going in between. A lot of those are like in your spinal column. And then there's the motor neuron that tells you what to do. So if I were to touch a hot pan, I have the sensory going back to my spinal column brain saying, okay, move your hand. Motor neuron tells it to move. So I have kind of that connection. There's also the involuntary nervous system, which is acting without you giving it any command, but with your brain at all. It's just going to happen. That's kind of like the knee-jerk reaction. That is, I touch something hot and I immediately draw back without ever really thinking about it at all. My brain can override that, but you know, I have a hot pan, I don't want to drop it, it's going to start a fire. That's kind of how that works. Also, the involuntary is in control of things like breathing, your heart muscle, etc. So those are the different kinds of tissues. Now, just to finish off this lecture, if we put a lot of tissues together, we are going to get an organ. An organ is a thing like your heart or your liver or something like that. And organs are part of different organ systems. Organ systems are groups of organs that will do a common function. For example, your cardiovascular system. It's doing the gas exchange and passing gases and nutrients and picking up waste products from your body. So it has a particular function. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the different organ systems. And we won't cover them all. I'll just put a chart up of the organ system. The ones we are going to cover, I don't know if you can see this or not, but the ones we are going to cover are, we're going to cover digestive, circulatory, respiratory, excretory, and reproductive. Now we will cover the other systems, in particular the endocrine system, which is like the hormonal controls of things, and how they are regulating these other systems. So we will be talking about that too, but not specifically by itself. We'll be talking about those things. We're going to be going through all of these different systems in the next several lectures.